Should we get started?
I think one of the reasons that the show is successful is in part that we do have a kind of a rogues gallery. We've built up a kind of a rogues gallery that is sort of fun, and one of the challenges is to keep it reasonably grounded.
Too much?
Remember, be careful. If Melinda sees any more marks on my neck, she's gonna...
Gonna what?
Though I loved the original Batman series and all the villains they had on there. We're not quite doing the Penguin and the Joker and those guys.
Sir, you forgot your briefcase!
But to have a rogues gallery of our own is very exciting.
Yeah, we had Diane Wiest, Alan Alda, Jane Alexander, Isabella Rossellini.
You can learn a thing or two from me, Raymond.
Well, look, the show has incredible guest stars, and they bring such gravity to the villains, because generally they're coming in to play a villain or some nefarious character that Red is against.
Why are you doing this, Raymond? I offered to make you a partner. My people came to you about the shipping routes. You turn us down.
I've never liked you.
Bringing a humanity to those villains in the same way that James brings humanity to his role.
I did what I had to do for our son, and you'll understand soon enough.
No.
We sort of map out the B story, or the Tom and Liz, or the Red Father Sam stories, you know, the stories that are the sort of emotional stories of the episode first. And then we look for a Blacklister who will embody that or help facilitate that story. A good example of that, I think one where it succeeded, was in the story of the Cypress Agency, which is Red giving Liz a case about an adoption agency. It allows her to reflect on her own choice to adopt a child, and in a way those stories sort of intertwine. But we do sort of map out the longer arc of the show and then layer in Blacklisters that seem like they would be a good fit.
Do you expect me to believe that? A secret meeting with the mysterious Wu Jing?
Intriguing, isn't it?
He's a myth.
That's what they said about Deep Throat and the G-spot.
Red says, I'm going to tell you about the criminals that you don't even know exist. So we like to have fun with different worlds and think, well, what would the criminal, version of that be? There was an episode where there was a character called the Courier, and it was the idea that basically if you're a criminal and you have to trust that your package is going to get there overnight, who do you rely on?
Once he's hired to make a delivery, he can't be bribed, he can't be stopped. If either a party attempts to double-cross the other, he kills them both. The perfect middleman for an imperfect world.
So there's all sorts of fun arenas we can go into and sort of put twists on traditional crime things. And then there's episodes like The Good Samaritan where you can find a way to do a very, sort of a familiar character as a serial killer that has his own emotional journey, but the Blacklist can still make room for those cases too when it's appropriate and when it serves Red's purposes.
One of our tests, I guess, in coming up with characters is, why is it somebody the FBI does not know about? How is this somebody who facilitates crime or who operates on the fringe that the FBI doesn't know about and yet they're realistic?
And really the key is, if they are going to have been put on Red's blacklist, if they're going to be on the radar, they really have to have done some mean stuff in the past.
My wife.
Yes, you did your very best to try and save her. It was heroic, in fact.
Early on in the season, a bunch of us went to the commissary here at Paramount, and we just sat outside with a legal pad and started thinking of bad guys. And that started the process that has been ongoing, and there have been a few times throughout the season where we stopped and say, let's think of some blacklisters. Would say, okay, who are they? What do they do? Sort of what's their superpower? What do they want? And if we can get those parameters, those key elements, then that starts to spur story.
You don't know who you're dealing with.
Why didn't you tell us?
I don't know his name. No one knows his name. All I know is the story.
Story? What story? All I can say is when writers suggest them, it's pretty easy to know, okay, yes, okay, no.
Then you are?
Oh, Ruth Kipling, the Amnesty Collective.
Diane Wiest is playing the judge, a character who has her own separate appellate court system for criminals who've been wrongly convicted.
How do you plead?
Lady, listen. This thing you're doing, this is a horrible mistake.
I said, how do you plead?
When you hear it, you're like, oh my God, yes, we have to do that.
The stew maker is an example of somebody that I think we found an article that there really is a guy somewhere out there in Mexico who stewed bodies, and we thought, well, that is weird, but can we make that not as dark as what it really is, but sort of, what is the movie poster? Like that's to me always the frame of reference is what is the image of what embodies that Blacklister? Tom Noonan was an example of somebody who I loved from Manhunter, and I thought, how great would it be to be able to get him to be in an episode?
I think The Stew Maker was probably one of my favorite episodes, probably one of the most warped episodes.
He was just willing to go for it. You know, we were like, here's the part. You're naked and you're wearing a gas mask. And you shave your body of all hair and you're wearing a wig and you have fake teeth. And he was like, fine, sounds great. We were lucky that the writers brought us that idea early on and that John has the experience in the movies that he's written of thrillers, that we crafted it in a way that had the consequence of establishing the genre that our show is going to live in.
I think the Cypress Agency and the Adoption Agency is one of my favorites, just visually. That sort of started with just knowing that we wanted to enter a room with all these pregnant women. That would be the poster for that episode, and then working backwards, I think thematically that episode tied in nicely.
Campbell Scott played a character much more sort of refined and dignified on the surface.
This agency is only as strong as its reputation, so I want answers as much as you do.
Frank Whaley, who played the part of a guy who had some issues with his mother, killed people who were abusers.
I suffered my share of pain as a child, courtesy of the one person in this world who was supposed to protect me.
The Good Samaritan Killer was one that was a serial killer case, was actually probably didn't belong on the show, and yet I think because of what Red was doing, that episode tended to resonate with people.
Now there's going to be a sharp pain followed by an involuntary cough, causing a shortness of breath.
We have been very lucky because I think people have begun to recognize that the characters that we create are so specific and so unique that they're fun to play.
We trust that our secret remains secret.
Alan Alda was like, really? Is he considering doing the show?
Everything changed the minute you surrendered to the FBI. Did you think we wouldn't know? Maybe you wanted to change our arrangement. Maybe you thought you could turn yourself in and find some new friends who'd protect you. Maybe you planned to expose us.
No.
First and foremost, find people who are compelling, and they will be compelling if they're a worthy adversary for Red. Having Red there as a touchstone to say, is this someone who would be worthy of the Reddington character, really tells you whether or not you've got somebody that will hold people's interest for an hour.
And I think it's great for a show that it isn't always the same people, and that we have these guest casts because they inject new energy and they enliven us, and I think they change the rhythm up a little bit. You never know what that's going to be until you're with those people in that situation. But it really does allow the show to be ever-changing.
I've heard the stories. They say you guys are taking down everybody, people who aren't even on our radar. How? Nothing? Really?
Well, my favorite villain from the season so far, I think, is a big fan favorite as well, and that would be Anslow Garrick. What was great about him was he had a great skill set. He was very dangerous, but he also had a personal vendetta against Red, which made him all the more driven and psychotic. And I also love the actor who plays him, Richie Coster. I think that guy is a chameleon, and I think he just knocked it out of the park.
Red. Richie brought this beautiful sense of humor to it, and at the same time, this incredible sense of betrayal, you know, and history between himself and Reddington. And he's even able to laugh when Reddington makes the joke about, you know, the only reason you're alive is because I changed ammo, and usually I use this brand, and I changed, and isn't that funny? Don't you when you look at yourself, remember that. And Richie laughed. I thought it was such a great, it's like, and yet here we are.
Horrific scar. I mean, how do you wake up to that staring back at you in the mirror every morning? But you know what? It's not the scar. It's really the eye.
It's just, I think, a testament to what the show is, that we've been able to attract such great guest actors, and they've just been fantastic. I think it's also gives them a chance to play somebody that's a little dark or a little warped.
And we've got a whole list of others that I think would be great. And it's just, you know, sometimes they work out, and there are many others that I'm sure we will never get, but it is fun to sort of play with the guest casting and let it have a real role in the episodes.